cliche to be like, my favorite character is one I played. But, I mean, there's other animes I've done where I am not my favorite character. I'm like, wow, I'm so annoying. That character is annoying to me. But Hanji, she was always my favorite, so... What about you?
When I was watching the show, Armin was the one that I connected with, that I really fell in love with, especially in M9. You know, the whole big speech thing happens. And like, and it's not necessarily the speech. While the speech is cool, and the speech is a really defining moment for that character, it's the stuff leading up to the speech where his character really changes, where he grows. And it's that entire scene where Aaron is telling him, look, this is why I trust you. And Armin's horrible self-image of himself kind of goes out the window, and then he's like, okay, no, I got this. And he changes right then and there. And it was one of my favorite moments. And just watching the show, like, that was badass. If I can play Armin, I want to. And then I got it. Like, it's great. Like, I'm still waiting for people to like pinch me and make me up for this. Like, it's crazy. But yeah, other than our characters, I think my favorite character in the show is probably actually Hanji. I really like Hanji. But other than her, probably Sasha.
Yeah, Sasha's my other favorite character. Sasha and Hanji are those comedic elements that I think the series needs. It's a really dismal world with people dying in horrific ways. And if they didn't have characters like Sasha and Hanji, I think that you would become really numb to all of the gore and how it's so sad, it's so painful, it's so sad and so painful. And I think that as unstable as Hanji's mind might be in some ways, and as ungrounded as she looks, she brings a grounding to the show, which I think it needs, or else it's just pain all the time. So I really like Sasha too.
Yeah, Sasha, she thrives in chaos. As long as she has a potato. As long as she has some sort of carbohydrate in hand, she's gonna be fine. But yeah, thank you. That was a great first question. Yes, sir.
Are those Google glasses?
Holy crap, dude, that's awesome.
Wait,
Can I borrow those
to
later?
take a picture? I've heard that you wink your eye to take a picture. Is that?
That is ridiculous.
That's
so technology.
Creepy and awesome.
So wait, no, I know I'm about to totally get off topic here, but like, is that one of the pre-orders, like one of the original ones? I know, I was about to say, it's a pretty penny for those things, but like, do you enjoy it? Do you think it's worth it? I just like the idea of potentially living in a future where we are wearing something like that, and then I can be like, hey, there's traffic in front of me, could you get me to work faster? And it'll like put a 3D overlay of where you need to go in front of you and be all futuristic. They were talking about doing stuff like that and having it ready within like the next 20, 30 years. Yeah. I was watching a documentary on a theoretical physicist that was talking about a whole bunch of different stuff.
That sounds pretty light, Josh.
What?
That sounds pretty light, a pretty light documentary. Was it a comedy?
Yeah, but it wasn't a documentary. It was just whatever.
You're a geek and I love you.
I know, I am a geek. I'm a big old nerd.
What was the question?
Yeah, what was the question? How we get into characters. I do a whole bunch of different high kicks around the studio while singing I'm a Little Teapot. It really, no, I can't do it right now. Like, I don't have a character. Like there's no character to get into right now. For me, it's mostly just, I'll do stuff like, sing in the car, and I do voices all day long when I'm at the house if I'm just sitting around. Like my roommate used to be a super skittish person that would jump at the smallest noise. She doesn't.
Your cat?
Yeah, my roommate.
Oh, your cat.
No. Yeah, I have 2 cats, and they would scare the hell out of her too. But like now she doesn't bat an eye. It's like she lives with a strange noise. Is how her boyfriend put it. It's like I'm a strange noise. But yeah, getting into characters usually, if it's a show that I know very well, like going into like doing Titan and stuff, getting into character for Armin was mostly just for the first half of the series was like, okay, just go back to being a teenager and feeling that you were useless and that you mean nothing. And that's exactly. But that's Martin for the first half. Is like he doesn't have any sort of love for himself. He doesn't feel like he is worthy of being friends with Eren and Mikasa or really anybody. He doesn't feel like he's worth anything. And he realizes that he is. It's a very long, painful
That's
journey.
episode 9 that you were talking about, where he has his big character arc, right?
That really big moment, that character development moment.
Yeah.
How about you? What do you do?
So I'm going to answer that with just a quick story, because I'm asked that pretty often. You probably are too. It's a great question. So I started the con circuit back in '98, because I started dubbing in '95 with ADV Films, right? So I forget which convention I was at, but it was '98, '99, ACON or AWA or something. Anyway, so someone's like, how do you get a character? And at the time, I was recording Cutie Honey. Cutie Honey, yes, Cutie Honey, for those of you who might not know, Gona Guy actually wanted to cast that show, and he wanted Winona Ryder to play Cutie Honey. He was in talks with Matt Greenfield, who was the director of the new Cutie Honey series. I'm talking about the 8-episode new Cutie Honey, not Flash or anything like that. And he's like, I want Winona Ryder. He doesn't talk like that. I want Winona Ryder to play, Cutie Honey, Winona Ryder. Yeah, that's terrible. To play Cutie Honey. And Matt was like, we can't do that. We don't have a AFTRA contract or SAG contract. He's like, well, if I can't have the actress I want to play my Cutie Honey, then I want to cast it myself. So they auditioned 9 of us, and for whatever reason he cast me, and it was a freaking incredible honor, right? So I'm at this panel, and they're like, how do you get a character? And I'm like, oh, well, right now I'm recording for Cutie Honey. And I said, well, as you guys know, whenever she's like, honey, flash, and her clothes come off, and it's beautiful, and all these beautiful colors, and she's like turns into whatever she. And I said, so obviously in the booth, I strip. That's what I do to get a character, and I played it really straight. I was like, I take it all off, I spin around, and then I'm really Cutie Honey, and I just go for it, and I become anything I want to become, and I make it so it works. It's glorious. Well, they took me seriously. And there was an interview, or not an interview, it was an article that somebody wrote, published online. Jessica Calvello, voice of new Cutie Honey, takes off her clothes in the studio to get the character. And I was like, you better take that down. I'm like, so I don't do that. I know, what an anticlimactic story. I'm kind of wishing I wouldn't have told this.
I don't really get naked.
I really don't take off my clothes. But I thought it was funny that they took me seriously. And I was like, first of all, I'd hit the microphone and jack up like the take I was trying to do. Like, you just can't really take off your clothes and record at the same time. You got your hands on. I really don't do anything to get a character. I'm a bad actor that way. Sometimes I know what I'm doing when I get into the booth, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I get there and I'm like, what show is this? And it's not to be disrespectful, but sometimes you don't know where you forget. I mean, I have the memory of a goldfish, so I forget sometimes. But what helps is to talk to the director a little bit, what's going on here, and sometimes I'll watch maybe a clip on YouTube of the sub or whatever I can get my hands on. But once I'm in there, I just start going, and usually the first few takes, I get into character and we figure out what we want, and then I just go for it from there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's usually going to be the process doing most anime, because most times the actors don't have any sort of chance to either see the show before they come in, and we never get a chance to see what the dub script is before we actually come into the booth. So like every time we're going in to record, we have about 10 seconds between each line to read it, realize what the context is, and then take whatever the director gives us to, and then turn it into a performance. It's like we've been rehearsing it. Like, it's just super fast-paced process. So yeah, it's really hard. Usually you have to find the character as you're recording. Yeah. Thank you. Great question. And I'm totally stealing your Google Glasses later. Yes, right next. Oh, you know what? You pick.
I'm sorry. Oh,
you pick.
Hi.
His question was, are we in the booth or in the same area, like usually at the same time as a group recording these shows? And the short answer is no.
Right. That's the way they do it in Japan. They're all, if you've ever seen any of the Japanese, they all sit in a line, and as their line's coming up, they stand up, they do the line, and they sit back down.
Yeah, and it's like this choreographed dance that they have to do.
It's really
like they have to rehearse, and they do the entire show almost in one take.
Yeah.
And it's not for every single character, obviously. Like they'll bring in, individual characters that don't have a whole lot to do, or don't have to play off a lot of people at the same time. But if they have like the lead characters, like prime example that I can think of, the Wallflower, was a Nabishan show. 4 dudes and a main female chick that were always around. They had to come in and record all of their parts for each episode, and it's usually just them for every episode. So they would go there and record the entire thing in one take, and then have to go back, rehearse it, do it again, just to make sure that we get it right or something like that. Over here in the States, it is a logistical nightmare to try and schedule that many actors to come in at any one given time, and then to try and get an entire day's or however long worth of work done in that time. It's not going to happen. Like, getting actors together in one place is generally like herding cats. So trying to schedule them to come in and work for something it's too expensive.
And you know what do you think about this? There's so much of a chance for interference. Like, you're standing up, you're going to the mic, you're sitting back down. Wouldn't that be like a post-nightmare for the engineer to take out all of the stuff in between getting up, sitting down? What if someone coughs? I just don't know how they make that work and how that's efficient for them.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just they figured out a
how they do
process
it.
for it, and that's what they do. I mean, it helps that they're not having to they have to sometimes dub their stuff because they're usually recording the episode to already sketched out animatics. And it may not be animated, but it'll be here's a frame, here's 10 frames later, here's another frame, whatever. It's like they're animating to the key animation or to the storyboards. As they're recording the storyboards to kind of get a feel for the timing of the show and everything else, so they can make sure that they're getting it all recorded and animated within a 25-minute period. And then they have to go and animate the whole thing. But the cool thing is, all the animators, while they have to rush too, they're getting to do everything post-process. They're still recording something that hasn't been fully animated yet, so they have more freedom with how they can deliver their lines and how long they can take, and it'll be animated. We, on the other hand, have to take something that has been completely 100% animated and write the dialogue so that it fits in the mouth flaps that are already animated. We can't change it.
And you're one of the main writers. You've written so many scripts, and you know what that challenge is.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And there's so much that goes into providing an English version for an anime that it's really just almost impossible in the long run for us to be able to bring in everybody involved. They tried it once. ADV tried it way back in the day on their first, one of the first shows. I think Devil Hunter Yoko they tried it on.
Oh wow.
And I think they also did it on Rune Explorers.
No, I was in that one. Yeah, we did do for Dirty Pair, the original Dirty Pair series. Pam Lauer and I played. I was Yuri and she was Kay. Thank you. We did at the time they had 2 booths in one room, but they were separate sound booths. And we did actually play off each other. David Williams, the director, wanted it that way, so we could really banter and have that more natural Kay and Yuri, and that worked. But it still wasn't the same thing. We weren't in one room. We were in 2 separate sound booths on 2 different tracks. So that's the closest that I've ever gotten to doing it that way.
And I've done that in bits and Walla sessions.
Yeah.
When we did it with, and you'll still do that in Walla. And who here has ever heard the term Walla for recording? Okay, Walla is just a short term for anime dubbing that stands for with all actors. And it just means that any part in the script that's marked as Walla, it would, for a Titan script, it would be marked Walla soldiers, Walla townspeople, Walla marketplace. And you would just the director will then bring in 4 or 5 actors, 4 or 5 male and then 4 or 5 female in different sessions. And
start jabbering.
Yeah, they'll just start jabbering. And they'll do 3 or 4 different takes of each scene with each group, doing different voices, higher or lower, talking about different things, sometimes just making little noises it just sounds like there's talking in the background. And that's really the closest and only thing that we do in the States.
And Walla sessions can get interesting because you can't really be heard what you're saying. So there have been some very creative Walla sessions where we're talking about all sorts of things in the marketplace. Like, oh, look at those sex toys. You'll never hear that. You'll never hear that because it's mixed down. Yeah, because Walla, the idea of Walla also is that you can't actually understand what anyone is saying, but you know that everyone's talking and carrying on conversations.
I love that you said sex toys and like 3 hands shot up.
Not mine, oh my God.
Yeah, but bits of Walla sessions get really
I had to
crazy.
ruin it, sorry. Not
No,
sorry.
you're fine. Like, one of my favorite bits that somebody threw in, I think it was Chris Patton, was having to do a Walla session. It was a solo. Like they were throwing him in after he had recorded the character on the show, and they were like, okay, for the next 30 seconds, and then like I think it was Foster, and he would just it was Kyle Jones, because he'll just throw out the most ridiculous directions for Walla. He was like, okay, for the next 30 seconds, I want you to be a giant blue elephant that's talking about his underwear. Go. And just absolutely ridiculous things like that. One of my favorites that he did was. There was some show that we did, like a high school-based thing, and then the kids were putting on a cultural festival. And he did this entire, like, 3.5-minute stretch of Walla that was just background stuff. That was a dude trying to find meat on a stick at the festival. And then cut to, after the, like, halfway through the episode, they come back, more Walla at the festival, and he was the same dude who had eaten way too much meat on a stick. And just like another
meat on a stick.
Exactly. In the back. Actually, yeah, sorry, way back. Hello.
Hi.
How's it going?
I like your green hair.
Thank you.
You're
You're welcome. Can I have it?
Steve Bloom, like the voice actor Steve Bloom.
Steve Bloom, yeah.
Have you met him?
I have not.
I have not. And I only know of him. I haven't met him. He's extremely talented and amazing. I've heard he's the nicest guy too.
Yeah, from what I've heard, too,
Yeah.
he is an insanely nice man.
Yeah.
Like, it's probably, and just a big geek, too. He's a big old
Yeah.
nerd. So, like, yeah, it's very, like, him and Matt Mercer are both, I think.
I'm meeting Matt finally at on the expo where you and I are also going to
I
meet.
didn't realize you haven't met Matt. Yeah,
I
Matt is
haven't.
Matthew is the voice of Levi for a time.
Yes.
Also, insanely sweet, really
Yes.
talented
I've
man.
heard
Also a
nothing.
gigantic nerd.
Yes, like you. Love it.
Love it.
Love it.
And now you, sir, the orange jacket, your question. A really hard scene to record? How about you?
Oh, man. Hanji was challenging for me the whole time. So oddly enough, the easiest scenes for me were the ones where she freaked out. You know, because that's easy. I can freak out. I play the psycho characters really well.
You came from the school of Excel Saga.
I came from the school. I am, yeah. So you know, when she's freaking out about stabbing them in the eye, and you know, and of course when that bitch Annie does what she does, you know, that was easy. That's just, you know, that's the stuff I had trouble with was the actual like the exposition, and you know, well, Aaron, this is what's going on, and this is how we're going to handle things, and because. Sometimes I would push, and I would do too much, and it's like, no, just talking, exposition. So that was actually, and as far as a scene, I would say like there's, I don't remember which episode this is, but where she keeps him up all night, and he's like, oh, let me sleep, and she's like, but I have so many more things to tell you, you know, and it's just like, and everyone, it's so funny, we laugh so hard at that, but it really like, I had to keep the excitement really down here because I just wanted to be so excited all the time. And then if you do that, then your character's all the way up here all the time, like Excel Saga, and your ears start to bleed. So it was really finding those moments where she's excited, but to contain it in a way so that you're not like, God, that's too, you know, that way when she does go over the top, there's somewhere to go. So, what about you?
I had kind of the same issue, but in the opposite fashion. Like for Armin, like the most challenging thing recording Armin overall was, at least for the first half of it, I would put too much confidence and too much strength in his voice. Like, especially before F9, and then, you know, Mike had to continuously bring me back, like, no, dude, has something that meek and mild, that very, no confidence type thing, and like a lot of like, there's this really breathy quality to Armin, and that was a really hard thing for me to continuously put out, is that breathy confidence. But it's
Is that part of your voice to push that back?
because you dry out your throat really quick. Yeah, you dry out your throat really quick, so you have to just continuously chugging water all the time. And then you go to the bathroom every 10 minutes, which interrupts recording time. But for the most part, Armin, overall, that was the hardest issue for me. Was just I would put too much strength, too much confidence into it. And, director Mike would have to bring me back in, and hey, but that's the director's job.
Right.
A scene overall, I'd say maybe the speech itself, just trying to, because Armin's voice sits much higher in my register than my natural voice does, obviously. And I play so many characters up in that range, like Kenichi, Yakihisa Yoshi, Kuranosuke with Amini, all those guys, they're all up in that register. But having to scream in a dramatic fashion, and really deliver something believable while not having it sound ridiculous was really hard. It's just such a hard vocal range for me to control, if that makes sense.
I just have to say something, but first I want a picture of you.
Okay.
Yay. I'm going to say this anytime we give a panel together. I just have to say this. I think that the hardest character to play in Attack on Titan, hands down, is Armin. For everything that you just said, first of all, it sits up higher, and we all know how hard it is to have a voice that doesn't sit in our natural range. Hanji's a little bit lower, so I have trouble with that too, and like you just said, Armin's a bit higher. So first of all, that's difficult. Second of all, such an acting challenge, because like you just said, and that is what a good director does. They pull you back, they push you however you need to be. But I totally understand what you're saying about the challenges that you had. And I just think that it's so easy. When I was watching this up, I was like, wow, that little blonde thing is really annoying. Oh boy, God, he's annoying. But you love him, you learn to love him, you want to love him, and you do. And I think it can be so easy for you to have a voice that would not be pleasing to listen to, and you freaking nail it. I mean, you really do, Josh. I've said this publicly online, and I say it in the panels that we do. I really think that you nailed Armin, and I think that it's so easy to not do a good job with that because it's so hard, and everything that you do in that role is perfect. That is what I feel.
Thank you very much.
Seriously, it's the hardest character.
Another question. You have had your hand up in the way back with the Space Dandy shirt. Yes?
So anime fandom often they kind of large, very vocal, often very mean community of people.
Right. Okay, so you're talking about YouTube comments and stuff like that. The anime fandom can have some very mean, very vocal people in it.
Yeah, very vocal people about, particularly about Japanese dub viewers.
Right.
And I was wondering how you guys deal with it.
How do we deal with mean comments? Is that the question?
Or just any sort of with people that are just going to
complain no matter what?
Complain no matter what.
Okay. So, first of all, I don't read reviews. I try not to. And I don't go to forums. And I do play a lot online. Got a public, Twitter account. Sorry, whatever. PG-13. Yeah, PG-13. Twitter. You know what I mean. Come on.
It's a twit.
It's a twit.
You're such a twit.
And a twat. And I have a public Facebook page, so I'm all over the place. When I see something disparaging that I might not have wanted to see, I kind of think it's fantastic. I did accidentally see it was for Gatchaman Crowds, and someone had said in the YouTube comments that I play Hajime, that I sound like Satan. And I thought,
that's the greatest compliment ever.
I am so excited. Do you know how hard it is to sound like Satan?
Especially as a female.
As a female, and as little Hajime, who's just boundless energy, I'm like, that is the best. I ain't even mad. And I posted about it, and I tend to try to turn it around and make fun of it because at the end of the day, whether it's a review or whether it's a comment on YouTube or someone puts something on your Facebook that's not nice, it's everyone's opinion, and it really doesn't matter. And I just turn it into comedy.
Yeah. Pretty much the same thing. I would argue that those people in the anime community are the vocal minority, just because it's so easy to, especially in the wonderful world of the internet, to it's so easy to think that, oh, I have complete and total anonymity here, and I can do and say whatever I want, and people use it as sometimes as just an outlet. And a crutch and stuff like that, just to be able to get some of these, just be able to get some of these emotions out and these thoughts out. And you know, some of them may be completely honest, or some of them may just be trolling. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, we do hope that more people or most people will enjoy what we do, because we do put a lot of work and a lot of our heart into the things that we do, especially a show like Titan. But thank you very much. But you can't, it is impossible to please everybody.
Yeah.
Like, if every single person on this planet were to watch Titan, that's like 8 billion people. There's no way every single one of them's gonna like it. And you cannot please everyone. So don't try, and don't feel bad when you can. If something just really bothers you about what the other person said, or if somebody's like, well, I just think they didn't do a good job, or like, this person sucks, like, really, you can do one of two things. You can either be like, okay, yeah, that's somebody else's opinion, whatever, mazel tov. Or you can, or you can let it really affect you and worry, and be like, oh my God, does everybody think that?
And I've seen that before, where some VAs get upset and they'll post about it, and I'm like, don't do it, don't do it.
Yeah, it's a trap.
It is a trap. It's a trap. Would someone take pictures of Josh and I? Who's good with the camera?
I would.
Someone, just come on up, whoever.
I will. I'll do it.
Just like,
And thank you, Alice.
as we continue,
Thank you for your
this
question,
is a
sir.
very tricky-
Was it sufficiently answered?
I am not done with that game. I
Thank you
can't
very
play it by myself. I get so scared. I just made it through the ice level, but that game terrifies me. And I can't, I have to have someone come over so I can play it. I have parakeets, and they hate me.
Are you talking about Alice?
American McGee's Alice. I haven't had that game since 2001, and I still haven't finished it.
That sounds like me in Five Nights at Freddy's. I can't. No. No. Did you guys see the cosplayer that was walking around earlier? That was the yellow one. I was like, oh God. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Alice.
Do we have another question?
Yes, that's the question. You pick. I picked.
Okay. You in the green. Hi.
I had a question. I was wondering if you guys think any Japanese, like, language training or
Hi.
picked up any.
Hi. You really did. Have you?
日本人ですか？
少し。
アメリカ人です。
そうですか。そう。はい。
日本語少しわかります。でもまだ上手じゃありません。
Oh, I didn't catch that last part.
But I'm still practicing. Like, basically saying, but I'm not very good, is what I was saying.
Me too. I took Japanese. So when I moved to New York in 99, and I started working for Central Park Media and Media Blasters and Tosh Productions, a lot of other dubbing houses up there. And I started doing a little bit of production work. I wasn't writing like Josh is, but I would simply stamp in the time code so that the scripts, we had a adapter, translator, adapter, and then I would get the script, and I was like the last person to get it, just sort of catch things. And I was like, you know what, I'm really tired and dubbing was different back then. And incidentally, I'm not trying to plug anything, but I am giving a panel on, I think it's tonight at 9:30, old school anime, where we talk about how back then, so different. Like sometimes we would get the scripts from like off the boat, and they wouldn't go through because the studio did, because I worked for a lot of small studios in New York, and they didn't want to pay for the 2 translators and the 2 adapters and a time coder. So we would get the script in, and it was like, yes, the stomach ached my qualms at 5. And you're like, WTF, what? What does that mean? What does that mean? So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take Japanese. So I studied it for almost a year, and it was the Learning Language Center in Manhattan. And my teacher was so hardcore. He'd be like, you did not review, and I'm like, I know, I suck. And we never even got to writing. Like, we just did conversational Japanese, and then I ran out of money because it was expensive. But it really did help me though as I was time coding, because I would be like, all right, we can do a konnichiwa here, or we can do I don't remember now, but just little things I can substitute. I'm like, I know what that means, and I can like kind of change. So I was not a translator at all, but it was kind of cool to be able to understand a little bit about what I was working on. I had a bigger, more of an appreciation for it. So I've always been into the Japanese culture anyway. I'm going to Japan next year.
Oh, lucky.
I know, I'm saving up my money. I'm trying.
Yeah.
I mean, I just went shopping, but I can't go shopping again. Ever, because I really going to Japan next year. So anyway.
I have some conversational stuff that I've been learning through the Pimsleur CDs, which, they're expensive, and just be really careful because they'll try and send you a whole bunch of stuff and make you pay for it. So if you're not prepared for that, you can end up paying a lot of money. But that happened to me. But it's useful. I think it's one of the easiest systems for learning that I've ever used. Like I've tried the Rosetta Stone and stuff like that, but like it just didn't click. The Pimsleur thing really clicked for me. And I took like a semester or two of Japanese at San Antonio College. Like the one time that I actually, like the one semester that I actually did college.
Were you learning conversation, or were you also writing?
We were also writing.
My teacher wouldn't even let us write. It was like, it's so complicated, you will not write.
Hiragana and katakana are not all that complicated. Kanji. Screw kanji. Screw kanji. No, but hiragana and katakana.
Awesome.
Because it's a very simple vowel language structure.
Simple for you. Okay, show off.
Yeah, it's just, it's just, you just go down the...
Sure.
Whatever.
Sure, Josh.
Oh my God.
I had trouble.
All right.
Yes. Can we ask Alice? She's taking pictures.
Sure, yes, absolutely.
Hi, Alice. Would you like to discern, like which one am I playing right now? I thought about that. I'm like, wow, am I making everything sound the same? I mean, you really can't get away from, I'm Jessica Calvello, and this is my voice. Like, there's only so much I'm going to be able to do to transform it, right? But honestly, when I'm in there, I really do feel, maybe not everything has exactly, completely different voice because of what I just said, but there is a little bit of a difference. Like Black Rabbit in Problem Children. Yeah. You're like my boyfriend in that, weren't you? She's energetic, but she's not the same kind of energetic as, say, Meek from Dragon Half, which I played back in the day. So, I hope that I bring a little bit of a different edge, or not edge, if the character doesn't need the edge, to everything that I do and make those adjustments. I hope that I do, and I feel like I do.
I think you do.
Well, thank you.
Like, just hearing, and it's all about, you have to listen to the performance and not necessarily just the voice. And I think that's one thing a lot of people necessarily don't do is like, and sometimes a lot of actors will, and I'm guilty of it. I did that during Titan. I feel like there was a lot of times where I was way too much in my head and way too concerned with, is the voice sounding okay? Is the voice sounding young enough or real enough for this character, instead of being like, am I nailing the performance? And that's a trap that you can fall in real quick.
But that's so hard with Armin. Like, I'm serious, Armin is the hardest character to play. You have to focus on so many different things at once. So the fact, like, how could you not be in your own head all the time? That is a hard character.
Yeah.
Really hard.
But I mean, I'll use an example like from your characters, like Black Rabbit, and then your character from Infinite Stratus.
Yeah, what was her name?
She's the student counselor.
Tatanashi.
Yeah, Tatanashi, yeah. Tatanashi does not have that motherly edge that Black Rabbit has.
Okay.
Black Rabbit is a very maternal character.
Protective.
Yeah, very protective. She is crazy. Like Tatanashi is, while she has that sexuality about her, and she's very forward with it. She's very flirtatious, but she's not. She's a good fighter and she's strong, but she's not super protective. Like, she's not a mother figure to anybody, and you can tell that in the performance between the two characters. That listening to the two, you can definitely hear the difference, and they sound like two different characters.
Thank you, love.
Yes. But yeah, it's just that's also coming from the writer's standpoint.
Got it.
So that's just stuff that you have to pay attention.
And there's something you said a second ago about it's more about the performance. I think that, especially the question that we always get, how'd you get into voice acting, and do you have advice for other voice actors? It's not that I hate that, but there seems to be like a connotation of voice acting is all about the voice. It's all about, no, it's not. It's about the performance. It's about the acting. So if you've got the characterization and you've got, if you got the characterization down, it will ultimately change your voice a bit, but it's really not about the voice. It is about the performance, and it's about the acting. And that's why I'm always like, don't just take voice acting classes, take acting classes. That's what's gonna, make you be able to be an effective voice actor.
Yep. Learn to control your voice. Learn what you can do with it and work at it. But getting the acting chops down is first priority always.
Right. How are we doing on time? I want to answer more questions.
Yeah. 15 minutes left?
Okay.
Jeez. Blue hands. Are you from Serenity? No? Okay. That we can go back and do again?
Attack on Titan?
Half the scenes I
Do you judge everything you do?
Oh, yeah.
I really don't watch my own stuff. I really can't for that reason, because I'm like, why did I make that choice? And why did the director let me make that choice?
Right.
What was I thinking? But then, that was also natural. I did it for a reason, and that's what came out. But I don't know. I have seen some of my scenes. I'm just going to contradict what I said. I have seen some of my scenes from Attack on Titan. And I am judging it, I'm like, wow, that could have been better, that was kind of bad. But I'm also proud of it, because I really did work my tail off for that part. Not that part, but for that, worked my tail off in the booth when I was recording for Haji. And I think there's always going to be a time when you go back and you're like, but then sometimes it's like, well, I made that choice because it was natural. That's just what came out when I was creating.
Yeah, it's like that was the read that came out. It was influenced by how you were feeling as the character at that moment, and how you were feeling too. And that's the other thing. Yeah, it's never wrong. There's never a wrong choice. I don't know. It's just there's sometimes when you go back and you get the entire context, and that's another thing. Going back to what we were talking about with, do we ever have people in the booth at the same time? And that's one of the big issues with if you're going into a show and nobody else is recorded or nobody else is recorded in the scenes around you. Yeah, you have no one else to play off of. You have no energy to match as an actor. You can't banter or play off what the other person's doing in order to reply to them. So all you can do is read the lines before yours and imagine how they might be saying those in the context of the scene. And the director will be giving you as much context as they can, but also time is money, so you have to do it real quick, and they have to figure out the quickest way to tell you, okay, this is what I need, this is how this line should be delivered because of all this other stuff that's going on. And then it's just like a gigantic jigsaw puzzle that you're constantly, just trying to find the right pieces for it and putting them in the right place, and you're blindfolded. And it's hard. But again, I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to your own personal opinion. There are shows that I've watched that when I first watched them after they came out, I hated everything that I did, and I thought I was a failure as an actor, failure as a voice actor, no one should ever work with me again. And then years later, I go and watch it again after just completely forgetting everything about it, and I could actually enjoy it. And oh, okay, no, it's fine. Everything's good. It just depends.
Can I pick?
Yeah.
Hi! I can't hear you.
What was the average work day? Usually what happens, they'll book you for the character you're playing. If that character is just in that one episode, then yeah, you'll be coming in and you'll just be knocking that episode. But if you have a character that appears throughout the entire course of the series over multiple episodes, then what they do is by the number of lines that you have and the number of reactions that you have, they figure out how many hours it would take on average to get all of that recorded, and then they book you for that amount. And that could be, you could do if it's an 8-hour booking, you could do all that in one day.
Depending on the voice.
Yeah, depending on the voice.
Could you do Armin for 8 hours?
I did one day and it sucked.
Yeah.
It was not fun. I generally wanted to do Armin no more than 4 hours at a time.
Yeah.
Especially if he was being screamy, which he always
all the
was.
time. Yeah. Just wish you could cut and paste it.
I know, right? Aaron, no! All sorts of ridiculous. But But then you could have something where like you have a 20 some odd hour booking. And like Kenichi, like one of the big shows that I did for Funimation the first time was called Kenichi My Disciple. The very first sessions that I came up for, I was living in Houston at the time. I had to drive up to Dallas. I had to stay there for 2 weeks just to get the first 12 episodes done, recording 10 hours a day.
Oh my god.
For 2 weeks straight. Just
The first volume was how many hours for you?
the very first volume was like 40 to 50 some odd hours long. And that was the entirety of that show. He never shut up.
Which anime was this?
Kenichi, the Mightiest Disciple.
Good
He
night.
never shut up. And it's a fun show, and it's a great show. But God, he was always energetic.
Yeah.
It felt like playing an Excel character, like
Oh.
from time to time. Like on a lot. Like I love it. Some people are getting it. That's the other thing that hurts me. Most people these days have never even heard of Excel Saga. And
Really?
It breaks
If
my
you have not
heart.
heard of Excel Saga, raise your hand.
If you've never heard of Excel Saga, raise your
I'm raising my
hand.
hand. I'm like,
Yeah, get them up there. I want to see if I can. If you've never heard. See, this is a travesty.
oh, it's crack anime
It
on
is, and
crack.
it's a total crack anime.
Yeah. The first 4 minutes of that anime took me 8 hours to record because we did things differently back then.
Yep.
But I just want to say, like for Maria Holic, it was also like a 40 plus. It was 47 hours for the first volume. So the first 12 episodes we did at once. It was like 27 and a half hours. And yeah, for Kaneko, I was like 4 hours cap me. You know, it's just going over that is just hard. So you know, you gotta plan it out and until you get it done. And then for like I did Fairy Tale the movie. And I played a very subdued character who was always depressed. She was a 400-year-old depressed pastry named Eclair. She wasn't really a pastry. But I found it funny that her name was Eclair and she was so sad. But that was a 7-hour recording session for the whole movie, and I could knock that out in one day because I wasn't screaming all the time. So it really just depends.
Yeah, it really depends on the character of the show and what that character is going to require. Good question.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, right up here. The question was, have they ever watched any fan-made stuff like a bridge series of shows that I've been in? And there's only one that I've been in that has had a bridge series, and that's Titan. And I did see a little bit of it when I saw the Everybody Loves Armin bit. I saw the
Is this Team 4 Star?
yeah, Team 4 Star. Anything Team 4 Star does, man.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And they're such nice communities
so
too.
nice. Yeah. So I play Britt Van Winkle in episode 4 of Hellsing Ultimate Abridged. And I wasn't in that dub. But Team 4 Star, I'm total fans. And so when they asked me to work with them, I was like, yes. And then I did see the first episode of Attack on Titan Abridged before they had to take it down. I don't know if it's back up because they got in trouble and they had to take it down.
Yeah, that was, I think, more Toonami's doing.
Okay, I don't know if it's back, but it's funny.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
So yeah, I did watch that one before it was taken down, and it's awesome. I love parodies. They're well done. Some of them, it's like, really, that's so not funny at all. But anything from Team 4 Star makes me laugh my tail off.
Yeah. Harmonize with me.
Okay, what's our time? How many more? 5 minutes? So maybe 3 quick questions?
Yeah, we'll do a little bit.
Okay.
Yes, pirate. Yes, you. Favorite action scene.
So for Hanji, it's when she's having a breakdown when that bitch Annie does what she did. Look, don't get me started on that one. Don't get me started. Not happy with her at all. So of course, that was for me. That's the most dramatic thing I got in there. And the other time where she's like torturing them when she's doing her experiments and stabbing them in the eyes. That was no. God, that was funny and so twisted. Love her.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Dude, you were hysterical. I was like, how can I not cry while doing this?
Damn you!
Brilliant. I think for me, the entirety of going outside the wall, the whole formation of the horses, like that entire scene of them having to go beyond the wall as the scout regiment and everything that they're having to deal with out there, that is one of the most brilliantly portrayed scenes that I think I've seen in anime in a long time, because I love the whole strategy aspect of it, and It's brilliant. I love that scene. I guess if you're just going down to, and just anytime Levi decides to unload, especially in the forest, when he starts going to town on female Titan.
Yeah.
While Mika says,
Hashtag things that should not turn you on, but. And I did hashtag that when I was live tweeting, sorry.
Tweeting.
I did hashtag things that should not turn you on, but do. Sorry, not sorry. Sorry, not sorry.
Okay, yes, sir.
When Aaron was eaten by the Titan?
Yeah. The first time seeing it, what the reaction was?
Pretty freaking upsetting, man.
Yeah, man. This is one of the first shows that has inspired real terror in me while watching it, like a living terror. Where you just feel so helpless while you watch it, and like especially in the whole like being eaten thing to begin with, it's just creates Creepsville. But like the first time I saw that scene, I think I screamed, "You really just did that!" Oh, this show is amazing! Like seriously, I thought that he was gonna be dead and gone for good. Like I thought, holy crap.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, like seriously, I thought that they totally were pulling like a Guy Daigoji. Like I totally thought they were pulling the same thing that they used to do like in all the old mecha animes. They would always kill off like the dude that was the coolest and that actually had like, a goal and was trying to do something, and no, he's dead. So now we have to have one of the weaker characters come up and be inspired. I mean, hell, they did it in Gurren Lagann. There was a part of me that I wouldn't even cast it all. I was like, okay, so like, are they gonna have Armin like go freaking again Gurren Lagann reference? Are they gonna have Armin go Simon? Like, is he going to step up to the plate and become like the new Aaron and be just a total awesome dude? Or like, I couldn't foresee it, and then totally went even better than I could have imagined. Oh, it's just so cool.
Yeah.
The first time I saw it, though, I was just, I can't believe that just happened.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting it. Yeah.
I don't even smoke anymore. I was just like, I need a cigarette.
There's one more. So that was the second one, right? One more. Yes. Okay. What baby?
Do we feel any additional pressure working on a show as popular as this? For me,
I
absolutely.
always put so much pressure on myself, so it's the same. I'm always like, pressure!
Totally.
So.
One more.
Okay.
You, yes ma'am. Doing Armin's scream, awkward? No. Painful? Yes. Oh God! Now I have to talk to people for the entire weekend. There's no way that I'm going to do this
Get
right
on
here.
Sunday.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I do it maybe on Sunday if I'm still feeling up to it. But I will say that we did the scream 4 times.
4 times? Why?
4 times, like because the first time that I did it was just a scream. There was nothing to it. It was just okay. Let's see if I can actually get the scream out in this voice. And it happened, but there wasn't any of the grit to it. Like there was no texture. There was anything in there. And so the second take is the one we ended up going with. I think no, it was the third take, and then I asked if I could do the fourth, just because I felt like I had maybe a better one in me still. Like it wasn't tearing my throat as much as I was afraid it would. But the third one I think is the one we ultimately ended up going with, just because it had that. That's where you can hear the whole mind breaking, like everything that is dear to him just vanished right in front of his eyes, and he is responsible for it vanishing. Like he was responsible in a large part for Aaron's death, and so like there's all these different thoughts to be going on in his head, and we just to be able to get that portrayed in that screen was really hard. Like Mike knew what he wanted from him, and I just couldn't get it to him the first couple of takes. The third one we got it.
Yeah.
And it's that, especially it's the whole like where he's really freaking. That's the thing. The challenge is, to some people it sounds terrifying, and people have told me that. To other people it sounds absolutely ridiculous and funny. And that's to me, I think that means that we nailed it, because he really is just losing it right then and there. You can't sound cool while you're losing your mind. Like it's kind of impossible. But yeah.
So are we done?
Are we pretty much at time?
You guys, thank you so much for being